deliberate attempts to destabilize the culture of the United States in particular by supporting and encouraging people within the United States who hated that society, who wanted to see it undermined.